sure you want to play your favorite game? You've studied the rulebook from front to back and it's time to explain the game to your friends. But wait, where do you start? Well, in this video, we share our tips of teaching board games, what to do, what not to do, where to start.
Coming up.
Hi everyone, hope you're well. It's Stella.
And Tarrant here from Meeple University.
Welcome back to our tabletop diary. You may or may not know that out of many types of videos we have on our channel, we have how to play videos. And when we play with our friends, probably around 95%, it will be either Tarrant or myself that explain the game. Well, mostly Tarrant. So hence this video. We want to share you what we found good or bad based on our experience teaching board games to our friends.
This is just based on our experience. If you've got your own tips or something you'd like to share, please feel free to write in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you.
Don't be shy. So, would you like to start, considering you are the one that explains both of the games? So what's important? Where to start?
So, by far the most important thing is to prepare. If you have read the rules but you haven't thought about how you're going to explain them, it's not going to go well. And my worst teachers are always when we change our mind at the last minute on what we're going to play, and we pull out some game that I haven't actually played in a year and a half, and I thought I remembered it and I actually didn't, and then I just sort of have the rule book out and I'm mangling through the order of the rules. I do remember all the rules, I just don't remember the way to teach them. I think the last time that happened was one of the brasses. It'd been a little while since I played
That's
it.
when I was away.
Yeah, you were away.
I can't distract everyone else while you learn the rules.
Yep. We were going to play something else. We changed at the last minute. I did not remember it as well as I thought I did, and it was just, I just felt flustered constantly through
Plus,
it.
do you feel like sweaty? You're like, oh my god, I can't teach this. I don't remember what's going to happen.
Yeah, so you have to think about it in advance. You have to know what order makes sense for you to teach the game in. It's just the most critical part.
So what is the actual order?
I mean, it will vary from game to game. It's almost always good to do a summary at the start that explains when the game will end.
I think
loosely speaking, what you're trying to achieve.
You and me have got similar teaching styles, and I usually like to put in the theme of the game as well. And I find that someone like me who the memory is not as good as you, sometimes connects the theme and the mechanics would help, if makes sense. Sorry, continue.
Yep, I think that's true. So generally speaking, the sort of game it is, the theme of the game, how that connects, what you're trying to achieve, and when the game ends. And if it's not just a victory point game, how you win. It's giving everyone all of that up front.
And telling them what you're going to do as well helps,
Yep.
so they don't ask straight away. Also, how about this? Hang on, that will come later.
I think there are some games where the theme is distracting. And
Can you think of an example?
one that I think it's not always that you just don't want to talk about the theme, but sometimes pushing the theme aside to explain it in mechanical terms helps. I think Food Chain Magnate falls under that example. You know, it's one thing to say you're hiring employees and you put your employees to work and this and that, but if you strip that all back and you say you start the game, or all of these cards represent an action you can do, you start the game with none of them. If you want to do those actions, you've got to recruit those cards, and they represent employees, and that sort of turns it into, because that one, it actually is, you know, you are building an action pool. You're not getting a team of employees.
That's correct.
Sometimes when the theme, I mean, that's a couple steps into the explanation, but sometimes when the theme is a problem, I'll put it aside.
I won't say a problem, but it could distract you from learning the games. And I think you've done it very well, because we do have how to play video for Food Chain Magnate.
And I learned this after we did that video. If I taught the game again now, that's how I would teach it. So I think it puts some clarity to
I don't think you put a lot of theme in that video, to be honest.
Yeah, I would have stripped it even more. Anyway, it all depends on the game. It depends. Everything in this video depends on the game.
We're all learning. So, and I really like that video, and beside from my fault of putting the certain sounds too loud, which I'll learn after that.
We learned from that.
That's right. A few others ones that we keep
ears.
growing. And we keep, learning and growing. So back to the explanation. You got the summary, everything. So at least we prime our students to see what sort of game it is. So I like to, as you say, come up with the mechanics of the game as well, because that helps to expect what kind of like game, especially for experienced players. Which brings me to another point. It also depends on the level of experience of the people that we teach. Like party games, people don't really play a lot of games, we'll drill into more details.
Yeah.
If we just explain to our usual gaming group who are very experienced, we just say this is deck building style, rather than this is what you do in deck building, like spell it out.
Yeah, in many ways it becomes much more difficult
for inexperienced players to play something unfamiliar.
Yeah, and even if it's not
start somewhere.
even if it's not that difficult a game, the terminology that you come to rely on when you're teaching gamers drops away,
That's correct.
and you have to prepare for that.
Yep. So what would you say if somebody asks you questions in the middle of your, I don't know, of your explanation?
I'm usually fairly accommodating to questions. Often the answer is coming later. If it's a simple answer and we've covered everything that puts it in context, I'll usually say it quickly and come back to it when I plan to. If there are times where it just doesn't make sense to answer the question yet,
I know.
I'll just say we'll come back to that later.
Yeah, there's and which is very important as well. Which part do you explain first? So all the summaries, and then where do you start from there? I like to do it in order of on your turn what you do, if that makes sense. Again, like there are things that it's like it's there's a lot of variables, so I like to start with what you do on your turn to actually okay, so this is basically how what I do on my first turn or something like that, and then the other one comes later. And I think you agree with that as well, like what you do, even like a really summary of what you do, and then you can get back to it after you explain other things.
Yeah, I think the general turn structure, assuming it's not a terribly complex one, generally fits well at that point. Then it either goes in, from that point it really depends on the game, whether it's what the individual actions are or whether you need some general concepts before you can go into that. That'll be really game dependent. And
I also notice different teaching style, especially when you're teaching at a demo or even more cooperative games where you don't tell other people the full rules. You're just like feeding in rules to them one thing at a time. But I think in our gaming group, mostly they want to play fully competitive, so they want to know all the rules except those little ones where what this style exactly means, what this logo exactly means, that can come later. They can just look at the rule, the reference in the book.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever taught in demo style.
I think you might probably have done it when we are doing playthrough together, where you feed the information a little bit in the more of a cooperative style of game rather than competitive.
Yeah, I guess we've occasionally done that when we're learning
new games.
We end up sort of morphing into a competitive game anyway, and I think that's why I don't really like teaching that style. I like to have the lesson plan and get it all out there. And I know sometimes we'll play and it'll be a very long teach, like when we did On Mars, recently. Got most of the rules out, and I want to get all the rules out before we start, and that's not always going to work for some players when there's an hour and a quarter of rules or however long
That's true.
there is in some of those games. Some people just want to get going into it and come back to rules later. That makes me feel itchy and incomplete.
Because you're so used to it, and so used to doing it on the video as well, and you just want to get it out in order, and it's also kind of like break your structure, and then you probably worried that you're going to forget something, and then you're not going to tell that person, and then that person, oh, I didn't know, I'm going to, if somebody is our friends we know, and that's fine. If somebody you don't know, and then like, oh, you didn't tell me that. And you know, we probably have that experience, and that's not that person's fault. It's just a natural thing to like, oh, maybe that person forget, or you know, thinks, or you know, got distracted by phones.
I think I think the way we teach in that way, getting all the games out, is it's kind of necessary given the volume of games that we have. We have a very big collection. They don't get played very many times each. You're kind of wasting most of your nights if you don't have the full game with the full rules.
Yep. When I do teach people in real life, obviously not in video context, I do like to stress the important parts or confirm understanding. So this is what you do, blah, 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 until that I finish that sections, and then I say, is that clear? And I also just confirm, you know, is that, or if this is really important, I can probably like mention it a few times at least. I don't know, like for example, the anachronies, what is it called?
The evacuation.
Evacuations.
The importance thereof.
Yes. Because, yeah, if you don't remember that, you can lose a lot of points. And I feel bad as a teacher, and therefore we feel bad as the student.
Yeah. Just trying to think of some good examples of teachers and games that were different to teach or interesting to teach.
I can think of one.
Yeah.
Cold Express. It's a light party game, but it's, I don't know, it's different.
Yeah, I must say I'm guilty of treating that as a completely light game and trying to introduce it to people for whom there's quite a lot of things they haven't seen before. Definitely guilty of that.
And it's like once they know what's going on, they enjoy it. It's probably one of those that you kind of like, you kind of need to try to play it as a play around playthrough for people to actually understand how this works. I don't know, maybe in a kind of like real life situation.
Yeah, there's elements of it of seeing just how the stack of cards works, how skipping your turn to draw cards works, that I've found often gets lost when people are more interested in how their figures are going to move around the train.
Yeah.
We always get it played, but yeah, I've come to always want to try
You
to
gave
put
up.
I always want to try to put expansions into that game because I think it needs them. And you know, when you've got to explain how the marshal plays on top of how the base game plays to people who haven't played that many games, I've stopped doing that after a few attempts that didn't work.
That's correct. So another thing that I think of right now is, I think a lot of time people like to jump ahead to like just explain this one first, like this is what you do, blah blah blah. But hang on, what's the context of the game? I have like, it's probably like my brain is like, well, what's going on? I have to like, maybe I'm used to the structures like from here to here to here to here, and if you know somebody explains something in the middle, I'll be so confused, and then it feels like everything's tumbled, and that's it. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. I think one other game that I would highlight for being a memorable or notable game to teach is Keyflower. And the reason I remember it, and the reason it was so far different to most games, was that the mechanisms in that game are pretty simple. It's very easy to grasp auction game. But the whole game really leads up to what is a pretty complicated method of getting tiles and scoring them. And if you don't understand that at the start of the game, if you don't know what sorts of boat tiles might be available, what end winter tiles might be there, how to score the autumn tiles, if you don't have all of that in mind, the game has got away from you really quickly. So I remember teaching that to a group of 6, and half the teach was just going through the scoring and what all the scoring tiles were and making sure people understood those. And half the teach was the mechanics, which were really simple. I don't think I've ever dedicated such a large portion of a teach to the intricacies of scoring.
How about Kanban?
Kanban
has got a pretty complex scoring system, which we have done a video for, which we have a lot of visual examples.
It does have a very complex scoring, and on the Vital Lacerda side, the fair scoring in Vinhos has a similar effect. You basically stop and score by a different means and then come back to it. It never occupied as great a proportion because there's so many other mechanics in those games, so not as much of a proportion as Keyflower did. But particularly with Kanban, we definitely had to go through that again when it was time to do Sandra scoring.
Yeah, because it's I don't remember it now. This score.
It's a complex one. It's a tough one to big picture understand. Probably the toughest of any game that I've played, to grasp on the big picture what you're trying to do to get the most points, and then work that out mechanically on the small scale is actually quite tough. And I always try to give that big picture implication, which goes counter to your very sequential style.
Yes.
But yeah, sometimes with games like that, you've got to come out and go big picture again once you know the mechanics before going back in.
I do that as well sometimes, that the big picture is very important at the start and then sequential. I guess that's how my brain structured. So thanks guys for watching. If you have any questions, comments, you like to add anything, or even you want to ask for tips or something, just write in the comment sections below.
If you enjoy the video, please help us out by hitting the like button, and please subscribe to us. You can click the Meeple in the corner and hit the bell so you'll be notified of our next videos.
I always confused with this one, Meeple.
It's in a corner.
In the corner somewhere. And I also on Instagram, so look me up, Meeple University or Meeple University or something like that. And it's somewhere here.
It's showing up below us.
Correct. So follow me there, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.